through verse 10. And this is what the promise says to us. It says, "Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine." I love if-then statements that are universally true. So I love statements like, if you spend less money than you make, you'll have more money. I love statements like, if you use more calories than you take in, you'll lose weight. I love statements like, if you heat water to 100 degrees, it will boil. I love statements like, if a number is even, it's divisible by 2. I love if-then statements that are just universally true. And here's why I love them. It's because it helps me to know how to operate through life. If I have this type of wisdom, if I know that if this happens, then this happens, it allows me to know how to operate relationally, technically, organizationally in the world. I know if I don't do this, then this happens, then there's some freedom and some clarity to know how the world operates. I'm not wandering around going, what's going to happen if I do this? And if this happens, what's going to be the result on the other side? That's what wisdom allows us to do, is it allows us to operate freely in the world around us. And promises that are if-then statements given to us, like this one, they create, like what I said, this thing called wisdom for us. And wisdom allows us to see the correlation between cause and effect. If I touch the hot stove, I get burned. If I spend too much money on coffee, I'm going to be out of money by the end of the month. Or as we work with our kids, if you're mean to your friends, they go away. If I live in unforgiveness for too long, then I get to suffer the consequences of bitterness. There's this wisdom that helps us to operate through life, and these are helpful because here's what I have found to be true, is that God has created a universe of order. There are so many places where it's just universally true. If you do this, then this happens. And if you don't do this, then this happens as well. And we know how to operate in this universe. And once you know the if-then promises that are available to you, you can operate freely in the world around you. And there are actually 2 if-then promises that are put together here in this proverb. The first one says, "If I fear the Lord and shun evil, this will bring health to my body and nourishment to my bones." Now, here's the thing. Studies have been done over and over and over again that have said, if you shun evil, if you actually engage life the way that the scriptures call us to engage and resist giving into temptation, that it actually brings health to your physical body. And I love that there's so much science that is coming out right now around this. There's so much science that says, look, if you actually forgive, you have a lower chance of Alzheimer's or dementia. There have been studies over and over that says if you pray, your stress level dramatically goes down and parts of your brain fire that are never fired outside of the context of prayer. There are studies that have been shown that if you engage in community, your lifespan extends farther than it would have if you lived your life alone. And I love that this promise is here. It says, if you refuse to engage evil, it will bring health to your bones. Now, this does not promise that you'll never have any health issues. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be nice to just say, hey, if I follow God and shun evil, I'll never have a health issue? That's not what this says. Newsflash, we're all going to die. I hate to tell you that, but at the end of the day, that's how this game ends. And so that's part of this. But it does says that by fearing God and resisting evil, it actually allows health and nourishment in your body to thrive. It creates a context for that to take place. And this isn't just being a good person and then I will find health and nourishment to my body. It's recognizing that Jesus has actually set up the universe in our favor, and that if we flow with him in the way that he has designed this universe, it will bring health and nourishment to our body. But then there's this other if-then statement that we don't usually like as much as the first one, that is connected to this one as well. He talks about shunning evil and it will bring nourishment and health to your body. But then it says, if you honor God with your wealth and your first fruits, then you will be overflowing with more. Now, before I go on with this statement, verses like this have been used to abuse and have been misused and have been used to manipulate over and over and over again. So as a pastor, there's a hesitation to either have these conversations. Because usually what happens is if a truth is twisted and used to manipulate, it loses its power that was originally there. And this is actually a critical promise for us to engage in. Because here's what I also know to be true is the scriptures say that God's people perish due to lack of knowledge. In other words, what kills us is that we actually don't know the system. We don't know how to operate within the if-then system that God has for us. And if there is one area that I see people perishing in, probably more than almost any other area, it's their finances. I don't know why, but I have conversations with people and they are free to tell me anything about their life and they feel free to tell me anything about their life. And I have conversations with people about sex, about politics, about what happens at work. And then the second we touch on finances, they're like, oh, no, we don't go there. There's something deeply personal about that. I don't know why, but it seems like it touches at a core. And I think it's why the scriptures connect to it so much. And it's actually something that so many people are actually ashamed to talk about. And because of that, I actually think it's one of the most important conversations to have. And there must be something to this promise. And so I want to break it down just for a moment. See, I think the first hurdle that we have to overcome when we read a promise like this, honor God with your wealth and your first fruits. I don't know about you, but my first thought is, oh, good, a promise for the wealthy. Not me, right? The fact of the matter is, if you are living in America, you're wealthy. If you are here this morning and have clothes on your back, you have some degree of wealth. You may be more or less than other people, but we live in the 1%, especially living in America, in California, where we're at today. We live in a space of wealth. So he says to honor God with our wealth, which we have, but then he says to honor God with our first fruits. Now, that's not normally something that we talk about, our first fruits, right? Because this was a conversation originally, which was, hey, when your crops come in, when you get your first crops in, take a percentage of that and give it to God to make sure that the temple, the synagogue, the house of God had more than it needed to survive, to keep going, to keep moving forward. Now, we don't bring in like a crop of olive oil. We don't bring in a crop of pomegranates, but we do get a paycheck every month for some of us. And we do get income that comes in on a regular basis. And so this is the equivalent of what the scriptures would be talking about. And we are called to honor God with our wealth and with the first of our income. Now, how do we actually honor God with that? This word honor is this word kabod. I love this word. It actually means to make heavy. The literal word translation says to make weighty. So an accurate translation says to make weighty your wealth and to make weighty your first fruits when it comes to God. Make him the weighty one in our conversations. We are to make God weighty with our wealth. So how exactly do we do that? What exactly does that mean? Here's the thing. You already make something weighty with your wealth and your first fruits. We already all do that. For some of us, theoretically, we make Amazon really weighty. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I could go up to the doorstep and I'm like, wow, there are 6 packages from Amazon here this week, right? And I just noticed, oh wow, I make Amazon weighty at times. For some of us, we have made eating out weighty. And when we look at our budget, we're like, wow, where did all my money go? Oh yeah, I went to Starbucks and Jack in the Box and wherever else we were. And we make eating out weighty in our budget. For some of you, entertainment is what you make weighty. And a big chunk of your wealth and your income goes there. Here's a way to know what you make weighty. Just look at your budget and see what's the heaviest line item. Or ask yourself, when you get your first paycheck, what's your first impulse to go buy? What's your first impulse to go do? What's your first impulse to go spend on? What are you most concerned about? Where does your heart, your mind, your spirit, your body go when income is brought into you and wealth is brought into your life? What are you concerned about? Are you concerned about getting what you want? getting what pleases you, getting what you need in the moment? Or is there an invitation inside of you to honor God with what you have been given? See, the question that I long for us to step into when it comes to our wealth is, how can I honor God? How can I make him weighty with what I have been given? Now, you don't ever get a 3-point sermon from me, but you're going to get a quick 3 points in this, because here we go, all right? I want to talk to you about why this is important, because it's one thing just to say to honor God with your wealth, but I want to talk to you about 3 reasons why this is so important, and here's why I want to have this conversation. Not because I need you to give to Humanity Church. We've already done our offering. We're not going to do another offering. Don't worry, all right? But I've learned that in my life, the more that I engage this promise, the more it becomes true in how I relate to my resources and my finances and how I see them. 1, God already trusts you with everything. Whether you know that or not, God has already said, hey, everything that you have, I have given it to you. Your house, your car, your residential space, your finances, all of your stuff. God, it's all a gift that God is like, here, I would love to entrust this with you. But he is looking to see if you will trust him back. That's the relationship that he's established. He's saying, I've already trusted you with all the stuff that you have. I want to see if you trust me back. I remember early on when I would go take my kids to McDonald's. I know I'm that dad, sorry. But we go to McDonald's and we get a Happy Meal. And we'd be driving in the car, and I usually wouldn't get anything. And so I'd usually ask back to Jackson or Colin, could I have a French fry? And usually the question would be, well, how many French fries? And I would respond, well, what if I wanted all of them? Well, they're my French fries, right? And I would, inevitably just say, yeah, I'll just take 2 or 3. But the fact of the matter is I bought those French fries. I gave them to him. I technically own all of the French fries that are in the car, and I have gifted them to him. And when I ask back for a French fry, I'm testing to see, hey, will you actually give me back what I've already given to you? And in the same way, God has blessed us immensely with so much. Some of us have more than others. Some of us even struggle with the little that we have, but God has given us so much, and when he asks to give us back, he's saying, do you trust me in the same way that I've already trusted you? Will you actually give back to me in that same way? See, God doesn't actually need your income, newsflash, but what he does need is your trust. What he longs for is your trust because of who you will become when you trust him. The second point is this. God is actually looking to see if you are a good investment. Now, I know that seems like a harsh statement to make. That might even seem like, is that biblical to make? But I actually think that God is looking at, hey, when I give my resources to someone, what do they do with it? Now, let me just ask you a question. Let's just say that you came into some money and you wanted to invest it, right? You said, hey, I'd love to invest this money to make sure that this goes to something either really important that matters to me, or I want to make sure that I get a return on my investment. And you handed it over to an investor, and you gave it to the investor, and you said, hey, I'd like for you to go do something with this, make more, expand it, do what I want with it. And then a month later, you check in and you say, hey, how's the fund going? And they said, I bought too many Frappuccinos. I forgot about that. And then the next month you go back, great, all right, well, let's just start over. You take the money and we go back, and the next month, hey, how's the fund going? How's the income? How are things rolling? I forgot. I went to see that movie I wanted to see, and I got the extra large popcorn and a drink, and I bought my friend 2. Right? After a while, you're going to be like, no, thank you. We are going to pull that money back, and we are not going to be doing that anymore. You would not go back. See, in the same way, God is actually looking to generously pour out on people, and he does. That's the crazy thing. He says that he gives without hesitation, but he is then saying, all right, when I give to you, what do you do with it? If I give you more, will you utilize it for kingdom purposes? Will you actually utilize it to expand what I'm doing in the world? See, what he wants to see is what you will do with the resources that he has already given to you. He's already given it to you. He's just looking to see, what will you do with it? I love this verse in Matthew 6:33 that says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. We're the only ones concerned about whether or not more will be given to us. That is not even in God's wheelhouse. He's like, that's a given. What his concern is will we seek his kingdom and righteousness first with everything that we have? And here's the third thing, and I actually think this is probably the most important of everything when it comes to this promise, is that God wants to free you from the horrendous poison that is greed. That is the human default. That is the human default. So look, that you are greedy, don't be upset about it, right? It's literally like our factory settings. If we were born into this world, it is what we are born into this world with. It's why I never had to teach Jackson or Colin, my kids, the word mine. That just was built into the cake. It was built into the human experience. I had to teach them things like sharing. Taking was actually their default, and not sharing was a part of the package that came with it. And see, here's the thing that I have found myself saying at times: I don't have enough money to be greedy. Anyone thought that before? Like, I'm just trying to pay my bills. I would love to have some money to be greedy with. I'm just trying to get by. But here are some indicators that you might actually have greed that have seeped into deeper parts of who you are. If your decisions are not based on how can I be generous, but they're based on how can I just meet my needs, greed might have already taken over. If your decisions are scarcity focused, like, hey, I don't have enough and I'm trying to get out of not having enough, you might be in a greed conversation. If you are unwilling to discipline yourself and stick to a budget, you might have allowed greed to come into your life. That one hits personally. And if you find yourself complaining about your finances more than you are participating in your finances, you might have allowed greed to enter into your story. See, greed is so insidious because Jesus is always attempting to give us life and life more abundant. And greed is constantly telling you that you do not have enough. And so you need to preserve the little that you have and even get more. And it shouts in your face that scarcity is the only option. And so when you start engaging this if-then promise, if you honor God with your first fruits and your wealth, then you will be running over with more than you need. What this doesn't promise is that if you give a tithe, you're going to get a Ferrari. I'm sorry, that's not what this means. But what this does mean is that when you start honoring God with your wealth, you will start looking out at life through a lens that recognizes everything is a gift and I have more than I need. And it actually creates a creative space within you. You're no longer just a consumer. You are now someone who creates in the world around you. See, when you start engaging this, you will start seeing God honored with your wealth. See, it would be enough just to honor God, but then he invites us into this overflow of honoring with our first fruits and our wealth. Like I said earlier in my giving talk, I used to be a greedy person. I mean, I'm just telling you, my life was consumed with how much did I have and how much did I not have and how was I going to get this and how was I not going to get this. And the second I decided, nope, everything is God's and he gets at least 10% of my resources, if not more, and then everything else continues to be a gift, the world shifted for me. And it doesn't mean that now I'm a millionaire, trust me, it's not that's the case. It means that now when I look out at the world, when I get resources, my first thought is, oh, what do we get to do with God this month? What exciting thing do we get to create this month with our resources, rather than how much more do I need? So I want to give you just some quick next steps on how to make God weighty with your first fruits and resources. And I'm just going to give you 3 arenas where you might fit into these. See, for some of you, honoring God with your wealth and your first fruits may look like stopping the bleeding. Which for some of you, it may look like, hey, my finances are a mess, and I need to just address it. For some of you, you're either like, I don't know what I'm doing with money. I have a paycheck that comes in, and then by the end of the month, I'm at a negative bank account, and I don't know what to do. For some of you, you may be struggling with income, and that's okay. For some of you, you may just be like ashamed with credit card debt. For some of you, you may be drowning. And here's what we found so many times at Humanity is that people find themselves stuck because they were too ashamed or too overwhelmed or too scared to have the conversation. And for some of you, your first step in honoring God will be just stop the bleeding. And if that's your case, I want you to come to Next Step. I want you to scan that card in front of you and just put on a prayer request. Hey, I need help. And we would love to support you in just getting out of the bleeding. And trust me, that may be the greatest step that God will be honored with, but saying, hey, I'm willing to humble myself and get some support here. For some of you, it may just be starting honoring God with a regular giving. It could just be like, hey, I'm going to set aside some every month. I hear all the time people saying, I can't give. And I'm like, yeah, but you went to Starbucks last week, I bet, right? And look, even if it's something, start there and allow God to expand it from where you go from that space. And then for some of you, you may be asking, what's next? Like, what's next on my generosity? What's the next level of honoring him? What's the next level of giving away? And I love, love, love getting to create spaces to be generous and to expand generosity. So here's what I want you to do. Find your partner. Again, I'm not going to ask you to disclose your financial statements this morning, but here's what I'd like for you to do. What is one step, just one step that you could do this week to honor God with your resources? For some of you, it may be like, hey, I need to stop the bleeding. I need to figure this thing out. It's too crazy. I haven't been on a budget. For some of you, it may be like, hey, I want to make sure that I'm planning well and I'm giving back. For some of you, it may be like, hey, I've been giving sporadically. I'd love to get regular. For some of you, it may be like, hey, we want to really set focused goals on what that looks like. So what's one small step that you could do this week to start honoring God with your resources? All right? Have that conversation and we'll come back. right. All right. I'm going to send you off to go blow some money at Chili's, all right? So, all right, guys. Hey, thank you guys for being here today. Just a reminder, Friday night is our Star Wars outdoor movie night. Invite a friend. If you're new here, we'd love to see you back at Next Steps in the lobby. If not, you guys are dismissed. Have a great Sunday. We'll see you next week with our sound actually working. Thank you, guys.